It's not hooked up.
Receive mine. Nope.
Okay.
We got no power. Oh.
Yeah, he is. There we go. All right, it is 2:00 and we will call this meeting to order. First thing is roll call. It looks like all the trustees are here. Julie Stott, our treasurer, is not here. We'd like to remind everyone to speak into the mic and also, outside of the director's office is a rules of conduct posted, and it states that we need to be respectful of other members and library staff. So I would just like to remind everyone that decorum of all participants is specified in Robert's Rules of Order, that we should behave in a civilized manner and we debate issues, not personalities.
I wanted to talk just a few minutes about parliamentary procedure because I have a few concerns. Could I do that? There for today.
Is it an appropriate time to do that, or?
It's just about procedures. I'm concerned about something that happened last week and I wanted to suggest something for today. Concerning parliamentary procedure. It'll just take a couple minutes.
Okay, if it's not out of order, I don't mind.
I think procedures sometimes is good to talk about. So one of the things, the first thing I wanted to talk about was a misunderstanding that the board members may or may not have about parliamentary procedure. Our bylaws have specified that we use Robert's Rules of Order for small boards. And what that means is that this whole book applies to us. There are 5 or 6 or 5+ rules that are relaxed for us. Because we're using small board rules, and one of them we use all the time is we don't have a second. And then another one is that we are allowed to start discussion on topics on the agenda before a motion is made. In regular parliamentary procedure, a motion needs to be made before discussion happens. However, all other rules apply to us, and they apply to us. It isn't like those 5 rules are all we have. All of the rest of them apply to us. And at our last meeting, we had 2 motions where discussion wasn't allowed because it was said that the discussion happened beforehand. But actually, those parliamentary procedures concerning voting apply to us as they're written here and as they apply to all boards. So when a motion is made, and it's stated by the board chair, and then discussion on that motion. The pre-discussion is not discussion on the motion. So there's a discussion on every motion. There are a few motions that don't require discussion. Adjournment doesn't, and there may be a couple of others. But so I don't know I know that those motions did not have discussion. Discussion wasn't allowed. And I'm kind of concerned that it may be nullified by that. I don't know. I have no idea. But I would like to make sure that from now on, it doesn't apply for today, but that from now on, once a motion is made, that there is discussion allowed on the motion itself. Yes, people might have amendments. People might have questions. They might not understand the motion. So there's a number of things. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, and I think this is probably what you're alluding to. It's the issue of everybody getting to speak once before people speak again. And I certainly am a person that has forgotten that rule. And to that end, I'm wondering if we can't, just go around, like we have in the past, and have an order to it. I brought for my own self a checklist, so that I could make sure that we did that. That seemed to be a good thing. And as I said, since I obviously am a person who has forgotten that, I'm assuming that it would be good if we all got reminded of it. And that's all I have.
Okay, everyone gets an opportunity to speak. And so if someone has something to say and they haven't had a chance to speak, maybe they can just extra get my attention. Because someone else should be stopped if they've already spoken. I personally did not like it when we went around because then people would take several minutes explaining how they didn't really have anything to say. It was kind of a time waster.
I have one question. a thing like not having to second a motion. And we're saying that that applies to, small board. Where is that written? Is that, it's not in the bylaws, I don't think so. So I'm not opposed to it. In fact, I jumped in it right away. It was a motion made in the very first meeting. I think I seconded it. I was told you don't need to second it. Is there something in there that actually says something about?
They're in parliamentary, in Robert's Rules of Order, there are issues, exceptions for small boards. And it's Robert's Rules of Order for small boards, and that's what so you can look them up on the internet, or you can, I'm not sure how to find it in here. I
didn't find it for small boards on the internet, at least on Amazon. I just looked, maybe it's in our library. I don't know.
it's on the internet.
Our last director gave us all a cheat sheet for Robert's Rules for small boards, and we can
I think I might
take a
have it.
picture. Okay. All right, so we should get started with our budget discussion.
Do you want me to start? Sure. Oh, okay. Thank you. So in your packet, here is some more information. You guys will remember, we still have our worksheets, part A and part B. And after the last discussion, honestly, Janelle and Lindsay, listened to all of your feedback, and put together, some options, for the budget as well, focusing on 0% and 1%. And there were some, recommended cuts in lines 26 through 31, line 42, 70, and 78. And then that's outlined on this kind of summary sheet, the narrative. And then, the main difference between 0% and 1% is that the book budget or collection budget, instead of going down to 300,000, would only go down to 350,000, as a suggestion. And then you have the actual worksheets, and the items that are in yellow are the ones that have the changes.
Good.
The salaries are also attached, and you've seen that before. And then I'll just mention, because there's just one more item in your packet, and that was the general ledger that was requested of several line items. And so I can go over kind of this is basically a reflection of what we heard at the last meeting. It would be extremely helpful to get more of a sense of where everybody's at. We heard one person, and so if everybody is moving towards agreement, that would be helpful. But some of the reductions would be a $13,000 reduction in the adult programming budget, a $23,000 reduction in the youth programming budget. The physical book collection would be moved down to 300,000. The library of things would be reduced by 2,000, and the emerging technologies would be reduced by 2,000. There was a talk of moving the library equipment budget from 73,000, reducing it by 40,000, cutting 2,000 in dues, and reducing the conference and training budget.
Can I ask something? What happened to the possibility of using some carry forward?
So I do have one that I haven't handed out, and I can hand it out now. My only point would be that we haven't done that before, and it is slightly more risk, but I did prepare something for the board if you want to take a look at that as well.
I would, or at least have a dollar amount of what it looks like the amount would be that could be taken out of that.
So in this draft that it shows E-rate also being addressed, because there was talk about E-rate
Right.
and carry forward. So this reflects $100,000 in carry forward and approximately $97,000 in E-rate.
Okay, so what jumped out at me right away on this, what you just handed us, I haven't even really looked at it, but material selections went up from not the proposed cut, it went up from the base. So what happened there?
So it It basically added $200,000 back into the budget by doing those two things, roughly 200,000. And so these were just additional ideas. So these were what we had heard. And then these were some of the things that I had expressed as well, like I am concerned about our book budget being so diminished. This also does have one staffing reduction. I mentioned last time the 24-hour week maintenance assistant. So this does have a reduction in that one position, and that's the only staff reduction. And you can see with 0% and 1% and using carry forward and E-rate, you do get different numbers. It's less significant for reductions that would be needed.
And I'm sorry, and then I'll be done for a second. Why did so much go, and I know we're low percentage wise on material and salaries, but why did so much go on materials and not replace some of the programming for the adults and children?
It can go anywhere that you want. I had just heard in the last conversation that there was an interest to reduce programming, so I left it that way. It is possible. We do have the Friends of the Library Foundation donations grants. It is possible that they could give some grants to our programming. They often like to support things like that.
Okay, thanks.
They have been, though, haven't they?
They have already, yes.
I'll be in general complimentary that the library director and staff, in my opinion, did a good job of generally incorporating a lot of the suggestions that the board made over the last whatever sessions or budget sessions. And it did deliver us. Doesn't mean we can't change this, and we probably will, but we were given a balanced budget with a 0% increase in taxes or 1%. So while I'm not one to compliment everybody, I thought it was good. We got what we asked for. It doesn't mean we can't play with it from here, but thank you.
So I was gonna ask, I alluded to it, I don't, at the last meeting, but I don't see any values, but the fund. What I would expect to see on the fund, if I could see a graph versus time of the value of fund, I would expect it to be like a sawtooth plot. So as you go along the year, it would reach a minimum just before the July payment from the treasurer came in. And then it would ramp up $3 million. And then the rest of the year until January, it would go down till the next payment and it would go up. But I'd like to know, what are those minimums right before the payment comes in? Because what county official told me is the guideline would be 2 months of operating expense is what you should have as a goal. And for the cushion or for the fund, you don't want to get that too low, but 2 months of operating, which to me would be, if we're doing 3 million from the county, cover 6 months, that would be $500,000 per month. So 2 months operating expense, in my mind, would be roughly $1 million. I'd just like to know how that compares with what that minimum is.
Okay, I can provide that. I would also say that there is some risk in that if we don't receive reimbursement for E-rate, then that would be another hit. So it'd almost be be 200,000 out of carry forward. So there is a little bit more risk in this model than what we've historically done, but it doesn't seem excessive in my opinion.
But I wasn't looking to take 100,000 out particularly.
Oh, okay.
I would just like to know
Where
we are. I mean, if we got 2 million and we only need to have $1 million, then we can talk about maybe we can go to 1.5 million. But to me, the E-rate on the one that you put in the packet isn't in there, but it's like, I don't know, 80 or 90% chance we're going to get it. But I would specify that when that comes in, that goes back to materials is what I would want. that I would either like to have it in the budget, or
Okay.
if you're gonna take materials that much, it goes back in.
Okay.
And then I'm also curious why on the one in the, let's see, the one in the packet, I don't really know where, like on the summary sheet, second sheet in the packet, you got 13,000 adult programming, 23,000 youth programming, but I thought what I kind of threw out, which I think is where this came from, it was, cut it in half. So adult programming, looks like it was 20 in this original colored sheet. It was 20,700, but you get 13,000. So I would have guessed 10,350 for that. And youth programs is 23, but I taken out, but I would have guessed it would have been less than 20,000. So I don't know where those two numbers came from.
Less than 20,000 spent on it or taken out?
What is on this summary sheet, they proposed 13,000 out of adult. Oh, reduce to, okay, it wasn't reduced by, so reduced to, so even then, that didn't come out with what I said. I was saying by half. But I don't know where those numbers came from, or whether that was just what they worked out.
Yeah, I think it ultimately was so that there was a zero at the end. So, but it was mindful that there was a desire to reduce it.
I have some questions. So why? So I went back to, I'm just going back to the character. Now, I would just want to clarify, is the term "the fund" also equal to the carry forward? Is that what we're talking about?
That is kind of what I was saying. Yes, I apologize.
No, I don't know, because I always call it carry forward.
Carry forward, yes. Please.
Is that, okay. We've spent a lot of years working on the amount of carry forward we need, and at this point in time, and it's been worked out carefully with the auditor who felt like it was good, is that we have 4 months. We have October, November, December, and January in our carry forward, in our fund at the end of the year, and that's all we need. We don't need more than that, you know, when our budget, I mean, we get our second big check in January, and at the end of January, and I remember when we increased it from 3 months to 4, and our auditor felt that was quite generous. So I don't know why we would need more than the 4 months that we've looked at carefully over time.
And if I could speak for Janelle real quick, she would say, if we don't take the E-rate and we don't have anything left in the carry forward, then we would be in trouble.
Okay. The other thing about E-rate is I don't think that this library district has ever not received E-rate. I know that Post Falls one year did not because they lost their application, but I don't know how long we've been taking the discount. But we've never and I could be wrong, but let's say 95% of the time, let's just give it a lot of leeway, that 5%, but I don't ever remember not receiving it. So 100% of the time we've received it. Now, I understand that the federal government is iffy and all of that, but that's a lot of years of receiving E-rate and receiving it at a full rate. And I would prefer to see us budget for the discounted rate, which has come to us almost 100% of the time with a note. We don't usually use notes, but I would like with a note where we would say very clearly which accounts we would take it out of if we did not receive it. It would give us a more realistic budget. And it would also, what happens if we budget for E-rate at the full amount, and then we get the discount, it's really willy-nilly where that other money goes. You know, the board we kind of don't know. It is a clearer indication if we budget for a discounted amount with a note that says, if we do not get it, these are the accounts that we will put it in. The second thing on carry forward is, so if we did that, you are saying that we would have 97,000 extra dollars, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you estimated that we might be able to shave our carry forward by $100,000. Is that what you're saying?
It was just an estimate to start.
Okay, I just taking those two, that brings us to $197,000. I'm really concerned about the two new budgets. I'm going back to scenario A from the 7-6. And it shows that on scenario A at a 0% rate that we are $222,000 in the red. By putting those two things in, the E-rate and $100,000 from carry forward, we're now only $25,000 in the red. What I'm most concerned about is why is that I don't understand why this scenario from 7-6 at a 0% has the wages in it at that amount, and why we aren't keeping it. We're not, I don't understand why we've reduced salaries and wages when one of the things we're struggling to do is to move up there. So I don't understand why we couldn't continue to work with the 0% from 7-6, which I'm also quite concerned about the huge dramatic drop in services to the community. Because those are front door services, collections and programming is a front, I mean, it's what people come to the library for. It's like having like owning a grocery store and having problems and deciding to cut out milk, eggs, meat and bread. I don't understand. That is, I mean, it's absolutely what people walk in the door for. They walk in the door for a program, they walk in the door for materials. So I don't understand why we can't go back and look at the 0% with the idea of maybe looking at carry forward and taking some from there and budgeting at the discounted amount for E-rate with a note at the bottom saying, this is where we would take that money from should we not receive it. So it would be very clear. The board would be very clear. If we don't receive the E-rate discount, we are going to be reducing these categories. And I feel like that's actually a more, a clearer way for the board to budget.
I have a couple of different things. Can you refresh me on the amount of money the E-rate discount is that we're anticipating? I don't remember what it was.
It's roughly 97, I think, 97,000.
Okay. And then I was gonna say, I'm a kind of a fiscal conservative. I like emergency funds. I'm okay, in my opinion, for now. I like a relatively healthy cushion, meaning our carry forward amount. I don't want it down too close, but we're worrying about some expense went over what we thought, or money doesn't come in at the same time we expected. So that's just a general feeling for me. Also, the revised budget that we got on Friday, it obviously has a severe cut for programs, almost in half for the children's programs and adults. If that stays like that, or even if it's not quite as severe when we're finished with the budget, I'm hoping that we can find some kind of volunteers, or at least fewer unpaid people to come in and do these different performances and things that are expected from programs. Because that takes me back to my last comment was, I don't really know what the current role of a library is, and more specifically, the CLN library. Obviously, it's supposed to have books. I don't know where all the other program type, and I'm not picking on adult programs, there's lots of different things that the library offers. I don't really know how much of that belongs. being funded and belongs under the umbrella of a library as opposed to other organizations in the community. So I'm not saying I'm opposing them, but, I don't know for a community center here or a library or a little bit of both. So that's all I have for a moment.
And let me say real quick, 100 years ago, when I was a kid, our libraries had programs for kids and adults. So it's not a new thing to libraries. And you know, they can be looked at. I don't disagree with you. I was looking at some of the numbers. Some people get paid more than others. But I think it is important. I think it brings people into the library where more people are being able to just download books from the library even. It brings them in and gets them more interested in what we have here, the reading material. And the programming is all having to do with education, which is part of the library's purview. And one last thing, because somebody mentioned about the croc, like, are we competing with the croc? The majority, if maybe 99% of the things at the croc, you have to pay for to actually do it. And again, the idea of the library is that it's taxpayer funded, nothing's free, but it's free.
So I was gonna go back on what, Katie mentioned about 4 months on the carry forward. I think we're thinking about it wrong. It's a sawtooth blade that goes to a minimum in July, right before the 3 million payment from the county comes. That has to last 6 months. Just as much as the payment that comes in January has to last 6 months until the July payment. So it really has nothing to do with the end of the year comes on the 12th month or in December or until the next, it's how low does it go before we get the next payment. So it should literally be a constant drop to a minimum, go up 3 million, go down, come up 3 million. It isn't that you need to have 4 months at that minimum, but that minimum you need 6 months because you have to wait until your next payment. Your next payment won't be until 6 months. And as far as, you know, I call it the fund because that's what the accountant called it here, as far as I could tell. But the programs that I see, I think could be reduced. I don't, not to pick on some of them, but I don't know why we're having what I consider parks and recreation events. Maybe the strategic plan said to get out and do this kind of stuff, but why are we hosting, I like stargazing and I have a telescope and I have my kids do it, but why are we hosting events at Farragut Park for stargazing? Why are we having water parties? That's not programs that bring you into the library. So I would like to cut back on some of these and just go with library focused things. I like the prizes and the contests for reading. I like bringing kids and families in for reading. That I'm not looking to cut, but some of these other things that are competing with parks and recs or cooking for adults, I just don't get it why we're spending money doing that. And I would like to make it, it all goes back to the taxpayers. And I mentioned it before, my line item, dollar amount that I paid on my property tax for library went up 14%. And yes, my assessed value almost doubled, but I think almost everybody in the county had that happen this last year. But 14% when supposedly we took 2%, something isn't right. We're taking too much from the taxpayers and we're doing too many things that I don't think are necessary. And I don't want to pick on them right now. I'm just in general, I think we should cut back on some of these programs. We should try to fund the salaries reasonably. 10% increase is good. I don't really know what this, it wasn't explained, this, maybe Alexa can explain it, the 3% increase to those who aren't impacted. So is that people that were hired in the last 9 months that maybe were brought in on the blue scale and weren't on the beige scale? And we want to give them a 3%, or why is there?
Where are you seeing that?
This is on the summary sheet.
Friday's table packet.
Okay.
Yeah, right below the 0 bold sentence, line 19, move to the recommended minimum pay scale and provide staff not impacted by the change, a 3% COLA. But I don't think we even talked about that before. I was hoping for an explanation of what the not impacted was.
And I believe, and I'm not 100% certain, so I'll start with that. That there was some talk about compression. There was some talk about in the study about scales going up, people that had started and like 5 years apart. So essentially, if the proposed salary wasn't moving, they would still receive some type of adjustment. That's my understanding.
Are they on the blue scale or are they on the
Well,
beige scale?
No one's on the blue scale now.
Even new hires? that
Even
came
new
in?
hires, nothing has happened. And again, the blue scale that you're referring to is the recommendation that would be 2 years behind. So it's still very below market rate.
But if that's what we're moving most of the employees to,
Yeah.
to that,
Mhm.
why would somebody be advanced higher and be getting 3% if they're already on? I'm just wondering if some of them.
No one is on. No one is on the current scale of the blue scale that you're talking about.
Even new employees are
Even new employees,
are
no
on-
one
on
has.
the beige. Okay, thank you.
So then going from the beige,
Excuse me,
oh, sorry.
I like to talk. The only I just wanted to make sure when we said fund or carry forward that we all understood that word. I'm not criticizing at all that how we're talking about it. I just wanted to make sure that we understood what it was. I'm quite concerned about making that carry forward too big. If we make what we have at the end of the year, at the end of our fiscal year, we get our property tax in July. What we have at the end of September, what this budget has got to show is that we have enough money until we get our next big check, which is only 4 months. We worked on this before, because if you start increasing that carry forward and then we don't need it, then we literally do have a slush fund. We really do. And so we only need operating expenses when we start our year for this budget that we're looking at. We only need operating expenses or carry forward for October, November, December, and January. At the end of January, we get our next big check. And that moves us till July. In July, that will move us to January, but we have to save 4 months. We used to only save 3 and it was tight. We moved it to 4 and it made it, because we'd never quite know in January when we're going to get that. So I would like us to be very careful about increasing our carry forward, because that becomes a rather non-budgeted couple of months of operating expenses. And yes, you want a cushion, I know that, but actually what we are supposed to be doing is taking the money that we receive each year and spending it on services for the community for the year, not developing a fund just in case fund. And I mean, I understand that we have bad years and we have to do something different, and we always have the flexibility to adjust a budget in the middle of the year, should we need to. And those things happen. But I don't think that putting money into a fund that we really haven't even budgeted for, we don't know where it's going, is a good idea. That has caused some consideration in the past. The other thing is that we're touching on it some, but I think it's a very, very important thing that we begin to take some time to look at the role of libraries. I don't know with our new trustees, even how long you may not have ever been a library user. I don't know. I have no idea. But libraries over the last few decades have been moving into programming. And it is not programming. I would hesitate. I would like to take the programming that we have and compare it to what Parks and Recreation offers. Because you say we're duplicating, but I doubt if we're duplicating. Everything we do in this library for children is geared toward literacy. And one of the things you have not had the benefit of is hearing our youth services coordinator talk about how each program is helping toward literacy. The other thing for adult programming, that was on our strategic plan when we did our surveys, that was by and far the largest request, that we have other kinds of programming. Libraries are moving into a different mode. The programs that are offer a different way of being in the world, and they offer community to a community in ways. The numbers of people who choose to use the programs is very important. So every time you talk, you're talking about somebody who doesn't get to go to a program, somebody who loves a cooking class with a group of people and can't afford it to do it otherwise. Somebody, but they are all oriented towards something, they're not duplicating other services. And so I would be hesitant. I would like us, if we're going to be talking that way, to actually get what Parks and Recreation is offering, to get the services from the Kroc Center and actually look, is there duplication, or are we expanding what this community can receive, what people in this community can receive?
Well, the library can't be all things to all people, and it shouldn't try to be. I would like the library to focus more on literacy, because I attended a couple of the children's programs last summer, and they didn't seem to have anything to do with books. There didn't seem to be anything encouraging them to get books. I didn't see any books there. They were not at the library. Anyway, but programming is an advertisement, and it does bring people in. The board doesn't determine the programs, but I would like to encourage the library to look into getting more volunteers to share the knowledge that they have with their community. I think that would be a good community building thing. The library of things, I think, could be perhaps cut to zero, because I think it's an awesome idea, but not the proper role of a library. I'm not sure the music streaming, has that already been paid for? That was, someone had sent in an email and said that that's perhaps someplace that we could make a cut.
We usually subscribe for 1 year at a time, so we have to find out when that renews, but that's something that we could look at.
That's Regal? Is that Regal?
I think so. And
Didn't we get rid of it, but CIN still has it? Isn't that?
what, it was opposite?
It's the
Is it,
opposite.
it's the opposite? We were going to though. Cut out.
I think that someone chose to keep it for another year,
Okay.
But I'm not sure when that's paid.
Which line item is that? I couldn't find it.
It's actually in the collection materials budget.
It didn't used to be,
That's what it was coded to.
really. Oh,
So does anybody know how much that is? Because if that's enough,
what was he?
I don't know how many people use it and how popular it is, but how much is that?
17,000.
Yeah, that would make a big jump towards the, was it 25,000 that you said that we were still short?
Yeah, and that's interesting that it got moved, that it's not its own line item. Because it used to be.
Yeah, I think I remember it being on there.
It definitely was.
Circulation for that has gone up I mean, yeah, use of that has gone up. I think that we were looking at reducing it because, because it went down. It's on our circulation statistics. But it's gone up.
I would definitely count that as something that's maybe not in the library's responsibility, though.
And if it's already been paid, is there any possibility of it being prorated? Or is it just a year and that's it?
I can ask, but sometimes you're committed. I'll find out the date.
So I detect there's some confusion on the fund or the carry forward on what I'm saying. I am not advocating to build it up. I am highly suspicious that it is way too large. And I don't have a feel for it. What the way to look at it is right before the treasury, the county treasury pays us in July and in January. Or right after that, we have to be able to make it 6 months till the next one. So it isn't beginning or end of September, we have to make it 4 months. I mean, you can look at one portion of it, but when it dips down, the county treasurer says there should be a recommended 2 months of operating expense, no more. You can go lower, but we don't want more than 2 months. And to me, it's 3 million. The burn rate is 3 million for 6 months or $500,000 a month. So that would mean the minimum does not need to be higher than $1 million. Does that help, Katie?
No, actually, I'm not sure that what do you mean, does it help? I'm wondering if you're following what I'm saying. We get a big check in January. We do not get any other income or very little income until the end of January. But we have to budget. So of course, at the end, so we get a big check in July that goes for August and September. Then we have to build this budget. We need enough money since we don't get any more money. We need enough money to stay open for 4 months. Is that right? Is that right?
This is what
No, I'm just asking you, I would like to ask you to look at
I know you need it here, but in January, what I want to know is this minimum, is it 1 million or is it more? In July, we should hit about the same minimum that we hit in January. September is just a point in time. But if we are constantly never dipping lower than 2 million, we've got too much money. We've taken too much from the taxpayers. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I think that would be really great if you would go to our accountant and see if your graph works. But at this point in time, what I look at is we need to have 4 months of operating expenses in our budget so that we can operate in October, November, December, and January, because we get very, very little. I mean, it may follow that graph, but we simply need 4 months of operating expenses so that we will, and that will go down all the way down right before we get the check. But in order to budget, we have to have 4 months of operating expenses in this budget to move forward.
Can I ask a question for both of you? I feel like Katie's saying 4 months of budgeting for the months that we still have until our next check. And I think that maybe Tim, that I think maybe you're thinking she's talking about 4 extra months.
No, explain to me one time. She's talking about this 4 months.
I think what we need to know is, what is the average low balance over the last year, 2 years before a new check comes in? So if the balance never goes below $2 million, well, maybe it's too high. I just my guess. I mean, I can see you get a bunch of money here, it gets burned up, and then you get a new check. Well, how much was it when it hit the bottom? I think that's what we need to know. And if that bottom number is right, then great. If it's too large, then we have too much money in the carry forward. I think, to me, that's what that chart tells me, or your chart. You know, we get a check, we burn the check, it gets to a certain point, then we get more money. Well, how much did we have in the bank when it got to the low each time, right before we got paid? I think that's my understanding of this.
And I can't see anything, because all I have is this, this account or, accounting. Audit report, and it just did a snapshot at one point in time. I'm just trying to find out how much.
Janelle would have that information, but in her absence, I don't know if Alexa would be able to access it and from her
Yeah,
locked storage.
well, and I think what I'm understanding is you basically want to see like cash statements from June and December. So how much like cash in hand in our accounts? Would that answer your question?
Well, it's really the week before the treasury pays us. How low does it go? I mean, I don't know if they always pay on a certain day, but the week before they pay us in July and the week before they pay us in January, and maybe for the past 2 years, what that has been.
I can try to get that.
And I don't think that it always stays at 2 million. It's just that it's 2 million at the very beginning of the budget cycle. And then we have 4 months where it's going down with our monthly expenditures until January when we get our next lump sum. I don't know if that explains anything any better, but.
Well, I don't know what it is. Yeah. If this is 2 million in September or beginning of October, and then we get a payment and the next year it's 2 million again, then we're comparing from September to September. And if it's always 2 million, I still want to know how low it goes.
So I think just kind of generally, and this isn't a commitment, but it would help me to know, are people more inclined not to budget for E-rate? And then if something happens, we'll take it out of the collection budget or we'll take it out of the carry forward. Is everybody okay with moving forward with not budgeting that? So
I am.
I think I am, but I like Katie's idea that if we make the assumption we're gonna get a rebate or whatever we call that thing, then I think we should have somewhere in the budget that shows if we don't get it, which we probably will, if we don't get it, what's getting reduced. I think that was a great idea.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to budget for getting it when I absolutely don't know, but there's some possibility that it might come in beforehand. So we would know.
we may know at any
And
time.
that would be really good.
And I mean, my assumption would be, it would either be our collection budget or it'd be our carry forward that we would hit if we didn't get it. And I mean, that is what it is. That's probably what we would do as a default either way.
I would like to just not budget for it and have the collections be lower. And if we get it, specify, if it comes in, it goes into collections.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, if we really do have a lot of extra money in the carry forward, that should be credited to the taxpayers somehow. If too much was collected from the taxpayers, if we have too much. That's my feeling, is that they should get the benefit of us being able to access extra money that we took from them.
I think it would be great if we would continue to work on our salaries.
So that was another question that I kind of had for you guys. I know we keep calling it the blue column. I've heard Mr. Class quite a bit say the blue column. Is everybody kind of interested in that rate, or should we be adding more into the budget for staff, or are we good with 2 years oil market, or?
Because we have so much paperwork, is the blue column, scenario A?
No, so, that is a good question. Thank you. So the option A and option B, was, what the board before the new trustees joined had been talking about. It was above what I call the blue column. And so, after the last couple discussions, I heard Mr. Plast quite talk about the blue column, and so that was what was reflected in the worksheet that's the 1 and 2 that was in your packet.
Wait, can I go back? The blue column is reflected on this one, 717.
Back to the trustee, man, that's probably not known.
No, I'm talking about the budget
Yeah.
that she's handed out.
Oh.
I
It's reflected in the two newest documents that I've given you.
7/17 is the date, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's
In
what
both
I'm,
of those. Additionally, the one that I handed out in the meeting today that says, E-rate discount is not approved, and it has that, this one, it has the higher collection item. This one also has one staffing position cut, and that's the only difference in staffing between these two.
okay,
But they're both in line with the blue column. So you can maybe look at option A,
Scenario A?
scenario A.
Okay.
And you can see that salaries at 0% were 3 million. And now, it's at 2.95. So you're seeing some reducing.
And that's, I'm sorry, that's scenario A 7/6/23.
Yes.
Yeah, scenario A, the one you're talking about.
So if I could just get some feedback of, are we leaning more towards, again, back to like scenario A or B? Are we leaning more towards the blue column for staffing level, for bringing the staff up? And so, like I said, I've heard from you, but I haven't really heard from anybody else. So it would be helpful. I don't want to keep creating more options for you. I think that would be more difficult, actually. So if you could give me some feedback about what you're looking for, where you're comfortable. And that may be unfair, and I understand that. Because it is a bigger factor with 0% or 1% carry forward.
I would love it if we could go back at least to scenario A, which is, that doesn't put us 2 years behind, it puts us a year and a half behind or something like that. It's like, it's, you know, we've worked so hard and then to backslide would be, you know, and there are ways to take that column of on worksheet from 7/6 for 0% growth. And there are ways to make that column balance where it doesn't have to be such drastic cuts in what somebody is able to, the services that somebody's able to receive as they walk through the door. I guarantee you this is not gonna go over well with the community. And books, and still working on our, it's not a great increase in salaries, but it's more. I mean, it shows some, you know, good faith effort.
Katie, understand the blue column is a 10 to 10.5% increase for everybody, except for the two bottom ranges, they're 5%. I don't know why they only got 5% for the minimum wage type of people. I would be willing to up theirs, but I think a 10 to 10.5% increase is a big increase this year. And that's what's wiping us out on this budget, is this huge increase in salary. We're either doing too many things, have too much staff, we have too much going on, and we can't absorb that kind of hit without taking it someplace else. Or just telling the taxpayer, you have to do it because we have to do it. So if we go with these colored sheets from June, scenario A, that's a 12% to 12.5% increase. I'm just saying, please hold off a little bit and do 10% this year. And next year, maybe we can do better than 3%. We will get growth from the new construction, and we can maybe absorb that a little better.
Can I ask a question of all the trustees? Is 1% completely off the table?
Meaning our cost of living?
Oh, the 1%,
Increase?
yeah.
For the budget?
Is it completely off the table? I mean, do we need to get in our heads that we are not taking anything but zero?
I'm totally inclined to taking zero, not a budget, and not a tax increase, yes.
I'm also for 0.
I would absolutely go for 1.
I would go for 1, and one of the reasons is all of the emails that have been pouring in from the public. We haven't heard anybody speak yet at a meeting on it because we really haven't had public speaking, but We have gotten a lot of emails. There's been a couple that are against, but the majority are people literally saying, I don't have a lot of money, but I support a small increase to keep the libraries, because it is cheaper still to pay a little bit more and have access to all these materials than having to buy your own books.
I did have one idea that I'll just mention. In previous organizations that I've worked with, especially with budgeting, anytime the public has sent in a correspondence, we've read them in correspondence related to that topic. Not every board correspondence, but specifically the things usually relating to budget. And so, I can limit it just to reading the first name and reading 250 words, but it might be helpful for the board to be able to receive that feedback into the record during budget discussion. And it's just an idea. I've done it before and you mentioned them and there have been a lot, so.
Or to take up less time, maybe we can just like say this many emails asked us to increase taxes and this many emails said don't increase taxes.
I could do that as well. I could summarize briefly. Like I said, I don't recommend it for everything, but especially budgeting, that's what we usually need the most information and feedback from.
I have a question and I don't know if anyone would know this off the top of their heads, but just out of curiosity, like how many active cards do we have in the network? Or the network? Like cards that are actively used.
Cards or cards?
Cards.
Okay.
Accounts.
It's in one of the
It's on that sheet, that annual report.
I don't have I took out most of the stuff from my bag, so I only have the budget stuff and then current card holders is what you want, yeah.
Well, actively used card holders, because there may be.
The card holders,
That don't really use.
No, they purge it every 2 years, so I would say it's pretty active.
Okay.
They're good about that.
I need to go back to the salaries, more for clarification for myself. And in the summary, that was provided to us in our packet, line item 19 says move staff salaries to the recommended minimum pay scale and provide staff not impacted by this change with a 3% COLA. And yet I guess what I'm hearing is nobody then is unaffected, meaning everyone, there will be, I explain this. I think we're saying if the people are already in the blue column area before this meeting here, we'll say before the fiscal year starts, they're gonna get a 3% cost of living increase. But yet I think I'm hearing that there is nobody in the blue column now.
Beige.
They're all in the beige column. I'm trying to understand who potentially is getting or not getting this 3% COLA. Because if you go down those columns, if everybody is in the pink or beige column and they're jumping into the blue, then everyone's getting about a 10% raise. Is that correct? So then, does that mean that there's, if everyone's in that category, then people not affected by the change, which is everybody, they're all affected by the change. I don't get who's gonna get the 3% COLA. So everybody's jumping from pink or beige column. As I'm told, everyone's in there, if I understood that correctly from Alexa. And everyone potentially is gonna jump into the blue column, which means we're at the bottom threshold from what the study said is an acceptable, reasonable market range. Well, then everyone's gonna get shifted, therefore no one's gonna get a 3% COLA.
So I'm just gonna refer you to appendix A, line B. The temporary minimum is 1503 and the blue, the minimum is 1578, so that's not 3%.
So you see the more up on wages.
The second line down there, or for B, that's a 5% increase.
Or
From
on
beige, from
Right.
beige to blue.
from 1503 an hour to 1578.
Yeah, so those two, that's what I was saying. I don't know why they're only getting 5%. If everyone
Yeah.
else getting 10, I would be open to giving those two ranges more than 5%. But I thought you said they were not affected because they were in the beige. So that they wouldn't get the 3% either.
Yeah, it's a minimum that everybody would get, but I can find out from Janelle how many people currently fall into that. I do have some information on current wage.
But those two line items, A and B, are getting a 5% increase, moving
Okay.
from beige to blue.
I haven't done the math on those.
I did for each of them.
Okay, I believe your math is good.
And did we, get any information on, well, it might not have been long enough since just last Friday or anyway, about the hours, if there would be any savings by,
I do have some information. I can present it tomorrow.
okay,
I mainly wanted to find out, again, one staff position that's vacant open or more of a plan, but I will bring more information tomorrow. I just thought it would be helpful to kind of narrow down 0% E-rate, carry forward, or any of those kinds of things, because I don't want to just keep creating documents for you. And it's really helpful, like if someone says something, if other people say, oh, I think that's great too, because then I know it's more than just one person. Sometimes it's hard to tell if everybody is feeling that way. So just helpful.
okay, well, it sounds like we had 3 people for the 0% increase.
So I probably won't be bringing more than 1% moving forward. And then I heard E-rate, we can take that out and we don't want to.
I would just recommend some kind of footnote or something. When we get it, it goes directly to materials.
Okay, so
Or
you'd rather.
collections, what do you call it?
You'd rather see the line item for internet to be where it is, our expense, our actual expense, and then you'd like to see the budget down lower, and then when we get it. I just don't know because it's a reimbursement. I'll find out if that's okay. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay. So I don't understand why there are 3 of us who said we would like to budget at the discounted rate. I don't understand why we don't get to do that. I mean, that's just what happened with the 1%.
well, that's why I said it's helpful for me to hear the majority of what, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, I
So-
say cut
The
the
E-rate,
budgeted E-rate, because that money is gonna be used somewhere. And like, Tom was saying how Katie's idea of actually saying where the money would go.
Right up front.
Where we
Yeah.
would take it from.
Right,
If
yeah,
we
I'm sorry,
had to.
where we take it from.
Either way.
I'm for that.
Okay,
That gives us a little more money to wiggle room in our,
I
yeah.
agree. Okay, and then any just general thoughts on carry forward? Or an amount of carry forward, I'll bring more information about, but
I would like to see if Tom and I may be talking about exactly the same thing. For me, it is very helpful to understand that what we budget for is 4 months of salary, which we then use, 4 months of salary, sorry, 4 months of operating expenses, which we then use all the way down to nothing, as he says. But at the beginning of our budgeting season, we need 4 months. And I would like to, we may be talking about exactly the same thing, and I think it would be important to sit down perhaps with the auditor and make sure that, you know, what we're talking about. But more than that is starting to create what has been called a slush fund, and I am not in favor of that.
I don't know, others.
Yeah, I agree with, I think what most people are, agreeing with, that we don't want that carry forward to be as large as it is.
Okay,
But we don't know what the number
number,
is.
okay.
Yeah.
okay. But
Is
that's
that, am
helpful.
I speaking for everybody there that
No,
we just,
it may be just at the right amount.
but we need to know that,
Right.
that's what I'm
More
saying. But
information.
everybody would be willing to take money from it if we can, instead of having it bloated.
Okay,
Is that right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes and no. It shouldn't be 0. It never should be
Right,
0. It
Absolutely.
should, according to the treasurer, the county treasurer, it should be maximum 2 months
Extra.
at the worst case,
Yes.
I mean, at the lowest
Yes.
case, which if we're 500,000 burn rate per month, that's $1 million. But I don't know what it is, but I would be okay if it's, 750,000. It doesn't have to be two, but I don't really want to go take money from taxpayers to build it up more. I just want to know what it is. And if it cut, and the other part is, if we're gonna reduce it, somehow or another, it needs to go credited back somehow to the taxpayers. We took too much from them.
If we have, when we get our check in January, if we have $1 million in the bank, we've got too much carry forward.
No, that's 2 months.
That is what I would consider a slush fund. That's not what we're given taxes for. We are given taxes to operate the library. And they do not ask us to, the carry forward is to get us through the month until the next check. And that's what we've budgeted for. And if you add 2 months to it, then you've got 6 months, and we worked very hard to bring it to 4 months, which is just all we need.
Well, I think you guys are on the same page, just not speaking the same language. I really do, because you wouldn't want your household to go to zero.
No.
And then all of a sudden you and your husband's paycheck bounced and you have zero in the bank to pay the next month's dues or whatever, your groceries and bills, thank you. So I think, yes, you need the 4 months to run the library. But I believe what Tim is saying, in case, as Janelle would say, of half the taxpayers didn't pay their taxes and we don't get the check we're expecting or a check at all, we have 2 months of money sitting there that we can actually operate the library for 2 months.
If we add $1 million to carry forward, we will not be able to balance this budget, is my suspicion. But you guys are perfectly.
I don't think anybody's saying add $1 million.
What I'm hearing is that he would like $2 million. What I thought we've done is because I thought that was what taxpayers expected, is that we take the money and we operate our library. But, it could be that when things are worked out, you look at it. But my suspicion is that we would be increasing our carry forward by $1 million. I'm not certain about that, but if you want 6 months worth of carry forward, and you consider $500,000, that's just taking it out, then we will be increasing carry forward by $1 million. But you can see, Janelle is the person who would know. We would just have to see if that I could be very, very wrong.
I think if anything, I think Tim wants to make sure that the carry forward is reduced, if anything, certainly not increased. And I don't want it to be excessive by any means either, but maybe, and I'm not sure, are you looking at a calendar year, Katie, when we keep bringing these 4 month thing up? Because in my mind, I keep looking at what is the lowest it goes typically before the next CLN payday.
All I'm looking at is what is the money we need to operate in October, November, December, and January, since our fiscal year ends in September. What is the amount of money that we need to have in our budget so that we can operate until we come to our next check? And that, because we don't get income, or we get very little income in October, November, December, and January. So that carry forward needs to carry us forward through those 4 months. And then we get our next big check. Now, we haven't typically expected to also have on top of that another $1 million. So maybe I'm looking at it wrong, whatever, but that's what our carry forward is supposed to be, as far as I knew, was the 4 months where we didn't have income until our next big check.
And I think if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to get the auditor to maybe write some things out for us that we could review. And then I can bring some statements that kind of give you some data about how much is in the counts. I think those would both be maybe helpful on this one.
That'd be awesome. And you're gleaning enough from all of this to.
Well, I'm still
get that-
confused, but I'm
Yeah.
willing to bring more information back.
Yeah, please.
So we'll try. I did kind of want to switch to, if it's okay, the equipment line. There was some talk about equipment. And I think I expressed my reservation.
What number, I'm sorry?
Equipment, we were talking about cutting it $40,000.
But which line item, sorry?
It is,
Oh, 42? Okay.
yes.
42.
So I sent in the email about the packet, and I'll just read this really quick, that the equipment line is more than computers. It includes everything from printers, projectors, sound equipment, phones, security equipment, cameras, electric signage, screens, cables, keyboards, chairs, tables. So it's a lot of items in that budget, under 2,500. We have 101 staff computers and 141 patron computers. So it's not just like a business where, you know, we only provide computers to staff. It's to the public as well. And I will just frame that as the public is sometimes harder on our computers than like a staff person might be, generally speaking. And so our current computer life cycle is a 7-year cycle. And I think we kind of acknowledge that 5 years is generally the industry standard. And that we actually, if it still works, we still use it for another year or two. So and so on average, we replace about 30 or 40 computers. And so we kind of base on need. So I would have reservations about that large of a hit. It would likely make our replacement cycle up into 9+ years. And so for libraries, we pride ourselves on being able to provide the service. One of the measures of like how many out of order signs you see, right? I prefer not to impact public service that profoundly or potentially that profoundly.
Could you give the numbers again? How many staff computers?
101 staff computers and 141 patron computers.
Well, how
So
many of
some
those,
laptops and different things.
how many new computers are we planning to buy?
So we buy usually 30 or 40 computers a year. We use our discount for government and all of that, so we do get a good price on them. And again, we're kind of in that 7-year cycle, so it's still, it's already been streamlined, I guess is the way to say it. So it's not that big of a budget for all of that. Phones, if you know the price of some of those things, right? It can be pretty expensive. So I don't know if everybody, that was one comment I had heard, and that was another one. I wasn't sure if everybody felt we should make that significant of a cut to our equipment.
Is there some computer sharing? Because we have 101 staff computers, and don't we have like 100 to like 105 staff? Are they all using them at the same time, or?
So we have computers, like we would call them staff computers at our front desks. We would call like patron self-checkout machines a staff or a patron computer. We have bookmobiles, we have laptops that we take. Some of the items considered in the patron count would be laptops that we loan out or Chromebooks and different things like that. So I'm not quite sure. So a lot of our staff are part-time as well. So that was the count that I was given from IT.
How many do we loan out? How many? I didn't even know we loaned computers.
I don't know too much about that right now. I can find out.
We don't loan them to for people to take home.
No.
No, we just loan them for people to use in the library, and they are slowly but surely replacing a computer lab. Is that right?
I apologize. I don't know too much about that at this point. I know we have some, and I know he mentioned them to me. Sometimes we get grants and things like that, and so then we'll be able to purchase things like that as well. But I just wanted to get more feedback. If everybody wanted to reduce that line item, or if it was just more one person, and I know you had said you would review based on some of the information. I know you had said, I think, maybe going from 5-year to 6-year, but we're already at 7 years, so likely be like 8 or 9 years. So.
What about tables and projectors? You're talking about other things, are they?
Yeah.
I can see them wearing out this year necessarily.
Yeah, so like this year, we were reviewing maybe buying new audio for here or different camera, just some different options for microphones and everything. And so we're able to do that because we had, I think it was $8,000 assigned to chairs And our friends of the library are giving us a grant for that. So, now we have sub-funds for that. So we do get funds for tables and chairs and other ways, like I said, but it's grant money, so we can't necessarily count on it. And we don't know, they have choice about what they choose to fund. And so sometimes it's children's programs, sometimes it's a table. It's based on a lot of other things. So chairs do break. It's a public entity and building. And so, like I said, it's hard use. But we have, I think, 7 locations and our entire budget was 70 something.
I was gonna ask, so I'm assuming that Alexa's gonna need from us a couple of adjustments to go back and, regroup again to make this budget work out. So did we agree, I thought I heard more 1% come out. Did we agree that we're not taking a tax increase that is 0? So we don't need a 1% scenario?
Right.
Okay, and then I think we agreed, we do need to identify the carry forward low number that comes out on a regular basis, I guess. So that helps us know whether that's excessive or whether it's correct. And then the last thing, I don't know if we ever came to an agreement on the salaries, because I think these are kind of some of the big ticket things that are gonna make this thing balance or not balance. So the salary thing to me is still a little bit mysterious and up in the air.
I would like
For
to
me.
say that when, somebody says agree, I'm not in that agreement.
Oh.
I think that we should, we got so many emails on people who wanted us to take 3%. I'm not asking you, I mean, we don't have the majority, obviously. And so I don't know that it's even worth it bringing a 1% unless we really could. But I certainly would support doing more than a 0%.
My concern is that we have today to work on this, we have tomorrow to work on this, we have a little bit of time Thursday, then we're gonna get our final numbers, meet on the 25th, and then you have to publish something. And you can still discuss and change, but we're rapidly running out of time. And so I don't want to keep providing information and overload everybody. And I also don't want to just be listening to one person that may have said something. I'm just trying to get us a little farther so that we're feeling more comfortable. The other part of staffing is, like I said, our open hours and staffing cuts. I'll just say that I very much respected Tom's comment about having less staff and paying them well. I don't mean to paraphrase you, but I respected that comment. And so that is still a question that I think we probably need to talk about tomorrow about, staffing and locations and other things. I did include one staff change. So there's still a lot to talk about. So that's why if we can just kind of nail down anything so that I am not spinning my wheels with lots of different work, it would be really helpful for me. And you may have noticed Lindsay and Janelle are both not here right now, and they both won't be here this week. So in I guess, selfish interests, if we can, again, kind of move towards something, it doesn't mean that it's agreement, or it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind or not vote for it or anything. I'm just trying to expedite.
All I was trying to do was to say, when those words of we all agree or we agree, that's not true. I understand that my position is not a majority position, but it's the words. If the majority position wants a 0%, I'm not of that majority position.
I hear you.
I don't need a scenario. I get it. It's not,
Okay.
I mean.
That's all I was trying to do, is get like a more refined scenario for everybody. It's not a commitment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if it helps to balance this, and I agree with you. I mean, I would be up for a 1%. What is it, 43,000 that would come in, which isn't huge, but it would help. But go with the 0 because that's what is, the majority. But I would have to say that raising the line item for materials it's not the time to do that right now. It's great that we're not taking from it, but I don't think that it should be raised at this point.
Okay, when I said we agreed, I didn't mean everybody did, so my mistake there. My question was, if everyone now goes to on the beige/pink column, pay-wise, to the blue, is the pay scale behind schedule to be market rate? And by how much?
2 years by the time this is implemented.
Well, this year should have been the blue, realistically, this last year.
Okay, so.
So I look at it as.
So what I was gonna suggest was to make the budget work and to keep the pay scale current is go to the blue column, which I think that's already a foregone conclusion. I think we're going there. And go ahead with some kind of a cost of living increase, but it's not effective until a month or two before the end of the fiscal year. And therefore you have a pay chart that's being kept somewhat current, but it's not blowing the budget for us. And then we can address cost of living increases again when we get to this point next year. So just a thought, because if you take the cost of living increase for the whole year, okay, I don't know how much that costs the budget here as a whole, but I'd like to see the scale kept reasonably current.
Except they take their salary increases generally one time a year in September or beginning of October.
It can be done at any time, but generally in the past it has been in October, the fiscal year. But it can be done anytime, and yes, it can be done 6 months in, 8 months in.
But Tom is talking about two, one that would be effective October
Yeah.
1st, and then another one
Late in the fiscal year.
That can be done.
in next July, and I don't know.
The only thing I would mention is that it would in some way commit you to next year's budget to, having that realized for the whole 12 months.
Yeah.
So you probably, right? A lot of organizations like to do a one-time payment that doesn't affect the scale. And so that might also be a consideration. So you can make a one-time payment. It doesn't affect the scale. It doesn't affect other benefits, other items too. And it wasn't mentioned in this, so I didn't talk about that, but that's also.
So there may be a one-time payment with the October. I don't know when they would do that.
A lot of people
That
like
would-
Christmas time or
Okay, that
December
would
or
equate,
whatever.
that would maybe equate to a month or two's worth of COLA. And then next year, would we then have to make a larger COLA to make up for the one we didn't take, plus whatever transpires over the next year?
But it's not essentially committing your budget for the next year, right? So instead of taking money back away, a lot of organizations do it that way.
Yeah, and it's never committed. So.
Yeah. That's right.
So what's wrong with going to the blue salary range and just not doing a COLA this year at all?
That's what we talked.
That is.
But you were saying do a COLA halfway through the year or something.
Well, I'm just afraid if you take jump into that other column, the blue column, and including on top of that, a cost of living increase, I think that's probably gonna push the budget too far over. That's my concern.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing then. Go to the blue, but don't take COLA.
I was gonna say take a delayed COLA or a special payment. And that way, we're not paying a COLA that's the equivalent of 12 months worth on the salaries. We only pay the 3% on a month or two's worth and get their Christmas bonus out of it. I mean,
Yeah, and I'm definitely against the one-time payment, just because that can actually be something that people start expecting. Yeah, but
Don't do it
I would be
Christmas.
for, I would be for the blue column and no COLA. Add 0%. I mean, if we're doing 0%, we gotta, cut places.
Okay,
That's
jumping
what
in,
this is that.
I agree with Vanessa. So,
do we then also though go a little higher on the two lowest ones on the scale? You say only equate to a 5% and give them a little bit more? I don't know. But that was the only thing I heard.
Well,
I
this,
think Tim
this
said
was-
everybody's getting more or less 10%, but with the blue scale.
but
were
this
they
is a study
accepting
we
them?
had done,
Okay.
and this is the numbers they came up with. So,
Fair enough. Okay.
That was really helpful. Thank you.
I would, just say if you go to work this again, I was looking for clarification on the 3% COLA that you have about line item 3. If there isn't any such thing, then just, take that out of the sentence. And these, adult programming and youth programming numbers weren't really what I was saying. And I'm willing to trade if you really have to do something different with library equipment, but I don't know, is there any way to kind of give a list of, equipment that's in dire straits, how many of them are versus just, it's on a 7-year? If you had something from the IT department or a list of this equipment, what's on schedule, it might help me to say if I really want to take 40,000 out.
I would not recommend more than like $5,000. This line item is one that is expended pretty quickly. And there are kind of firm commitments in it, like I said, with the purchase of computers and stuff. 5 to 10,000 may be doable. There's not a lot of meat on this bone. I'll just, but
Well, I just, if you
Yeah.
had a list of, if somebody has a list
He
of
does,
these are
sure.
scheduled, it would be nice to see.
And like I said, it's not just computers, it's also our maintenance department and some of the items for them as well for all the branches. So,
I have a question on line item 46, repair and maintenance. How is it that it went from over 28,000 to over 7,000? Yeah. And I don't know if you, without Janelle here, I don't know if that's a question you can answer.
Sorry, which line item is that?
46.
Did we not do a bunch of stuff down in Harrison this year?
we have not done our ADA sidewalk.
And that would be from car and stuff, so it's kind of like, didn't we talk about that? Didn't they put in a,
Everything from the operating and put it in the car or something like that?
didn't we do, a whole office revamp, down there? Nobody here knows. And I'm not the facilities person, but it could be that.
No, but this is what we'll be budgeting. Oh, this is what we
last
did. Okay, never mind.
Never mind.
Knew that.
So I think we made a lot of changes here. Katie, where do we go from here as the old timer on the block? Does Alexa go back now and rehash the changes from today and then we come back
Absolutely.
tomorrow and see where we land?
Yes, absolutely. That is what happens is we hand it back to staff to see what we can do. And then it sounds like she's got a plan for us for tomorrow, because I don't know how much she can do, especially without 2 people. But, we hand it back to staff to redo. We don't do it.
Is there anything, I'm sorry, is there anything else you need to know?
Thank you. So library of things, I heard a couple of comments. Is that sort of everybody is interested in moving away from that? And then I also heard, I'm pretty sure only one person say programming stuff. I heard a little bit, but I didn't hear from everybody on that one.
When it comes to library of things, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know how much it has to grow every year though, also. And I suppose you kind of weed things out here and there. So I don't have a problem with that being reduced. But programming, I would actually like to add some back to that if we could. But if we can't, then I don't want any more taken away from either the adult or the children's.
Yeah, I'm good with reducing the programming.
At this level, like I said, the one that we had described, because it was reduced adult by 13,000 and youth by 23, and then emerging by 2,000.
Okay, so adult programming would be down 10,000.
It'd be down 13,000.
It looks like 10 to me.
Okay.
Is it?
Yeah, it was 23 before.
Oh, you're right here on this one.
Yeah, we could try that and see how that goes.
If there was any, I don't wanna say money that, you know, with it, that goes back into it, where would you, like, the collection's pretty low, programming's pretty low. Like I said, I'm not sure about the equipment, so we may need to shift a little bit more. Any other areas for me to look at?
I'd like to, voice my feelings on programming. Though programming is, I think that comes back to what is the role of a library, and programming throughout the country has become more and more a role of a library. And I think that more needs to be looked at it I'm appalled by the amount that's being taken away from taxpayers who walk in the door, who are expecting some kind of a different community experience. It is kind of like taking away parks. I put libraries in the same place as parks, that they add to a community, they add to the value of a community, but they add to the quality of people's lives that walk in the door. Our programs, so before slashing it, just because everybody's got a feeling that they want to slash it, do we not look at how has it been the role of libraries to expand in this way? I think it upsets me that everybody's got an opinion, so an opinion comes and then we take away things. We are taking away things from taxpayers. They will see it very clearly. We are taking away programs. We are taking away things that we have offered in the past, and we don't offer them willy-nilly. We do not offer things, we look at things and see how well they work. I think the thing that horrified me the most was when we started talking about summer reading and reducing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a valued program throughout this country. So I'm not at all pleased that we are not taking a deeper look at what is it that we are cutting. And I do want people to remember that you are taking away things from people who walk through the door here.
So I'm not interested in taking away things for people walking through the door, summer reading, things with books. I've said it before, the prizes, the contests, whatever. I'm interested in taking away programs where you don't walk through the door. Stargazing at Farragut Park, there's no way those people are coming into the door. And I don't know that it helps them come to the library more often. Having water park events or anyway, it's the things that the taxpayers don't come into the door that's outside of the library that I'm interested in concentrating in on. I would actually specify, don't take away programs in the libraries themselves. I'd also wonder, as far as other things, line item 30, communications and marketing, 22,000. It went from 25,000 to 22,000 this estimated year. Can we do less of that if we're also doing less of these programs? Could that be cut down by 10,000?
Yeah, I also didn't hear anyone say take away the summer reading programs. And we can be more creative and get volunteers involved. I think that we've kind of strayed from the mission of libraries as education to be more entertainment, and not completely, but I think that some of the entertainment portion that's just fluff could be cut.
And I think I did see a number of programs from the listing, a transaction listing as provided by Alexa. There are a number of programs there, musical performances and so forth. They're not inexpensive. I'm not going to go through the line items and reveal the prices. People got paid different amounts, but I'm not sure what let's say a guitar concert has to do with libraries. Am I against guitars? No. Do I like music? Yes. But how does that fit into the role of a library? And going back to that was a major thing with Katie there. I really do think that in the future, because right now I'm a rookie on the block here with the library. And the last thing I want to do is I certainly don't want to eliminate any programs, overall. But we need to revisit at some point, what is the role of the CLM? And are we a community center or are we a library? Are we a little bit of both? I don't know. And so, I do think there's plenty of space for some of the programs that didn't look like they necessarily aligned with literacy issues for children, let's say, or adults. That's all I have to say. Oh, and we can have volunteers, I think, increase volunteers to come in and do some programs. I'm sure there are people in the community who'd be happy to come in and entertain here and there.
I'm gonna ask about an example of a program that has been brought up, just use it. When we take and name something like stargazing, that's a cooperative program we do with Farragut, is that correct? I know
I
it is.
think it's in partnership.
Yeah, it's a partnership program that we do with the rangers out at Farragut. Learning, even though it's not in the library, so I guess I would be hesitant to say it's gotta be in the library to make it an okay program. Because if I had kids and there was a program that was going to teach them about looking at the stars, and it was sponsored by the library, but it did meet at Farragut, I would have thought that, and it was partnered with the Farragut information or educational programs that they've got there. I would think that was an incredible way for the library to provide a programming opportunity, because in partnering, I don't think we pay Farragut people to, so I would be hesitant to limit it like that. This is an opportunity to be very educational. And the only reason I'm picking on that is because I don't think it's a great idea to limit it to being in the library or whatever, that the library can take itself, that we take the library out to people as well.
I don't think it has to be 0%, out of the life, none of that. I think that we could have both. We could just focus more on things that were in-house, that had to do with literacy, things like that.
And there are astronomy clubs that host stargazing, and you see them advertised in Nicholsburg and places. So we're not the library is not the only one doing this. I wonder if Farragut does it on its own. But it's a lot of other programs I saw. I saw YouTube videos from Athol Library of making avocado salad, making salad dressing, making chicken parmesan or whatever. Why is the library, I assume we're paying somebody to do the filming and we're paying for equipment. I suppose the chicken and the cooking wasn't that expensive, but why are we doing this? What does all these YouTube videos about cooking have to do with the library? I think we can cut some things back.
Is that COVID mostly? I don't know.
I was gonna say, a lot of our stuff went virtual when we started during COVID to engage and give people an opportunity.
So we're not doing that anymore?
I don't believe we're doing any virtual programming right now. Yeah.
Are you anti-food?
Yeah, I was gonna say I was getting hungry. It sounded delicious. Yeah.
There's a lot of other YouTubes on how to cook.
Okay, so if I can kind of summary what I think I heard and then tell me if I didn't, I'm gonna bring you guys some information about our pre-go contract to see if it can be reduced or stopped or when that might be and kind of what the budget impact would be. I'm going to bring some form of statement from June and December, and then maybe also something from our auditor about recommendations and how much our organization should carry forward. And then I'm going to bring some information tomorrow about staffing and hours and a model maybe moving forward. And then this is the part I want to really make sure. So we're still looking at the blue column for staffing and no COLAs. And the adult and youth programming somewhere in that way. Library things program somewhere in that direction. And then equipment, I still don't know. If we can put a little bit back into equipment, people would be okay with that.
I would, because I feel like
the staff and you know more on that than we do of what is being, what's getting broken down and needs replaced.
So, one of my thoughts as a librarian is always when we're making reductions, how much is the public gonna see? How much are they going to be concerned by it? How much will it impact our ability to provide the services that we're known for? And so, that's why, like I said, I think programming is very visible, but technology is so key and our equipment is so key to operations that if we weren't able to buy something when it broke, that would be a very difficult place for us to be. Rather than if we budget for programs, that's something that we can plan in advance, we can have less programs versus again, something breaks and you can't replace it, so you have to stop. So I think that's part of it. And like I said, and just internally, I know how tight that is already, that we already try to get the most bang for our buck that we can. So.
Can you cut anything from software? That's something that I'm not, I know it goes up every year, but are we buying video games? Are we buying
No,
things?
so this is like, I asked if we could buy a project management software and it's like $600 a year and we don't have that in our budget. We can't. So it's that like Dropbox, it's every kind of software that we use for the public, for us. It also is extremely tight. I think it's already at like 80% expended this year. That's another one that's extremely tight.
Okay, I would like to see the library equipment dropped some. I don't know if the 18,000 or whatever is can be done, but
Maybe 10.
but yeah, you said 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And so if we can figure out a better place to take that from, then I would certainly entertain that.
And also please look at the communications and marketing. I don't know what those brochure or those or booklets that were meant for the summer programming, but that had to be expensive. Is there a way to do it like a Parks and Rec newsprint thing instead of a slick? Can we cut it back to 10,000 out of that somehow?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought the books were a bit much as well, so yeah, I agree with that. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Very attractive, they are.
Right.
Maybe excessive.
Well, and honestly, we may have less pages to it if we have less programs. So just as a cost savings thing, but.
I think the public will see. I think they'll notice if we, but I do appreciate the fact that this libraries, we reduce computers, we will be in a world of hurt.
What about the loaner program? Can it be slowed down, the computer loaner? Are these laptops we let people go out in the library and use? If we could back off on that
I
this
don't
year.
think it's very many. I think it's like 10 Chromebooks or something. It's not a large amount, but I can bring more information. Like I said, I just know we have something. I don't know.
But was part of this budget to add more to double it to 20 or something?
There are no increases really essentially in this budget for programs and services. But let me bring up more information about the loaner program.
Did you mention, seeing if you just kept the materials at its present level instead of going up? And again, I don't want to take from materials. I know we're already low percentage wise, but I don't know if this would be the year to raise it.
I think part of the thinking in that, on my part, was that if we do the outsourcing of materials and we pay for that, then we could reduce perhaps some staffing in our in-house processing.
What do you mean outsourcing?
So our vendors are able to provide what we call shelf ready. And so you pay like $5 per book for processing. But the other hand, then there's some offset staffing cost savings. So the other option was increase that budget to include the processing, and then you can reduce perhaps some positions at the time.
So you'd be looking a little bit at this sheet that you gave us last time, 7-7.
I was specifically asked to bring more information on the Sunday hours and then summer hours. And so that is what I'm working on.
Okay.
And so, like I said, the packet list has all staff positions. And then the one that I handed out today had the reduction of one position. And that reduction included the per year retirement and the wage. And that was 24-hour-a-week maintenance. So I didn't make any other major changes to that. And so I guess you guys could talk about, but more probably tomorrow. I didn't think we'd have too much time today about any kinds of staffing costs that way, reduce number of positions.
What about line 77? I was gonna ask, I forgot, storage rental. Why do we have that, and is there anything we could reduce that?
I apologize. I don't have any information on that. I don't.
Is that a off-site rental unit or
I'm
something?
thinking it is off-site rental, and I vaguely remember Janelle saying something about like documents and other things there, but.
Well, we have to keep a tremendous amount of documents. And we do not have a lot of storage places in our libraries. And there are other things, but I'm not certain either, but we've always had some kind of a storage unit and have needed one.
And like I said, if I vaguely recall, Janelle mentioned it was for the records retention requirements that we have as part of it as well.
7 years is what we're supposed to have. I would assume by a government agency, we might need more. That is a huge number of physical records.
Okay, does anyone have any more budget discussion, or are we done for today? Okay,
Well, I just would like to compliment everybody. You really helped in giving me clarity, so I do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for steering us in that direction.
all right, then I would, oh, wait. You did have that special, and we still don't need to do any of that, right?
I think we still have a meeting tomorrow and then Thursday, so.
Right, but those are already set.
Those are set.
So, okay, so we'll see everyone here tomorrow. And then again on Thursday this week. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it is unanimous. We are now adjourned. Thank you.